Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at It's Jessinho. So this is a little bit of a random stream. I know I don't usually stream at this time, 3 p.m. UK time, but when we get to the housekeeping towards the end of the stream, I'll tell you what this is kind of all about. But how are we feeling after yesterday's game? I woke up and I feel good. I feel like there was a lot of positives to take out of that game. And, I don't really want to focus on the negative or, overthink it. Anytime that Arsenal win a game and win convincingly and I get to enjoy the football, I'm a happy, happy girl. So today on this stream, we're going to talk about obviously Martinelli. We'll also talk about Lacazette, some team news, and I also wanted to just kind of touch on the Sun article that came out maybe 2 days ago, talking about how the Arsenal players have turned on Arteta and, they have feelings of, Arteta not taking responsibility for the losses and they don't necessarily like being dropped. I know it's the Sun, so we have to take everything with a grain of salt, but I think the overall, premise or topic of that article is pretty interesting. So we'll get into it, and obviously a little bit of housekeeping because I have some announcements to let you guys know about, later on. So yeah, let's get started. So if you're watching in the chat box, let me know where you're watching in from. It's morning for me. I know it might be afternoon for you. So good morning or good afternoon. And just let me know how you're feeling after the game. The first thing I did when I woke up this morning was look at that Thomas Partey pass again. If any of you guys know me, I'm a huge Thomas Partey fan. So I was really rooting for him in this game, hoping that he had a good game. I think he was good. Still not up to the level in which I expect, but ultimately I think he had a good game. And that pass that the turn and pass for Lacazette's second goal was absolutely amazing. It was stunning. And I don't think people really understand the level of skill that goes into passes and turns like that. It's not every player that can do it. That's why we don't see it that often. And ultimately, that's why I think we bought him, because he has a certain skill set that we don't really have in this team. Alexander says, I'm watching in from London. Well, good afternoon then. Thank you for joining the stream. And Stuart says, hi from the UK. I'm feeling great. Well, that's a good thing. I'm glad that, you're feeling good. And after that win, we can just kind of enjoy it for what it is and not overanalyze every single little thing, because it seems like every game is a referendum on the manager. And this doesn't necessarily have to be that, but I want to ask you guys, what was the better goal for you? Was Lacazette's first goal better than the second goal? I think they're so different, but they were both so good in different ways. The first goal was, I think it was like Lacazette or Partey to Lacazette to Ceballos to Saka to Lacazette. It was so nice. It was something like that. The flick from Ceballos was so good. And I miss that one-touch football. And I think you only get that when you play certain players in the team. And we'll get to maybe why that is, a little bit later. But I think I really enjoy the one-touch quick football. I think that no matter what team that you're playing, that's really difficult to defend against. So I thought that goal was really nice. But I think I'm more partial to the third goal or Lacazette's second goal, just because Thomas Partey was involved, and I just thought it was nice. Ravi said, how's it going? Big up from Southeast UK. I think for you Gooners, under this current regime, will end up falling short every season. I'm not sure. We haven't really seen this regime do much yet. I'm not sure, maybe you're not an Arsenal fan, but the current regime of Arteta, Edu, and Vinay have only been really in true power for this season. So they need a couple of transfer windows, and I'm trying to be optimistic about what they can achieve. So, you're entitled to your opinion, but I would say that I'm a little bit more optimistic about our future based on the people that are in charge, even though I know that they're pretty inexperienced. Alexander says the first goal was from Arsene Wenger's checkbook. Yeah, I mean, it did have that Wenger ball aspect to it. We were spoiled by those goals when Arsene was the coach, and I think it was just kind of like very reminiscent of that. And even the commentators were saying it. It was a very, very nice goal. Mark says, "Hey Jess, I hope you're well. Great intensity and purpose from the team yesterday." Yeah, exactly. I think we needed that going into Thursday. And I do see that there is a section of the fan base that is minimizing this win. And I get it. You have to take the opposition into account. Sorry, that's my phone, you guys. You have to take the opposition into account. I know Sheffield is the worst team in the league. They already kind of know that they're going down. So, but you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, I thought about this before the game. I was like, if we win, it'll be minimized. And, some of the fans will say, well, you're supposed to beat Sheffield. And then if we lose, then, oh my gosh, we lost to Sheffield. So really, no matter what the outcome of this game was, people were not going to be happy. But regardless, this team needs confidence going into Thursday's game, which is super, super important for us. So, again, every single game doesn't need to be a referendum on the manager. I just think that I see a lot of, if he doesn't win this, he's done. If he doesn't win this, he's done. The reality is, you guys, I really don't think he's going anywhere, regardless of the result, or whatever we accomplish in Europa League or don't accomplish. I don't think he's going anywhere, so this whole aspect of like, he's done. If he doesn't do this, he's done, is kind of like not realistic, but I do understand that there is a section of the fan base that can't accept where we are and can only quantify progress from results. So I do understand that, and I respect that. I just think that sometimes you just need to enjoy the game for what it is and not make it something that we have to dissect. And, what does this mean? And it was a game that we should have won, that we did, and we did it nicely, and we can enjoy that. And after the last couple of games against West Ham, Liverpool, and Slavia Prague, I personally was, happy to just see a game that we just won quite easily. It was enjoyable for me. Let's see. BWA Savages, failure to acquire a 10, failure to acquire a left back. That's why I will not judge Arteta hard this season. Yeah, that's very true. King Say, Gabby and Gooner says, big up, Jess. I am new to your show, but I have to say your work is good. Keep it up. And that comes from someone who don't believe in Arteta. Okay, well, I definitely respect that. I know, you're entitled to your opinion. And if you don't trust the process or you don't think Arteta is doing a good job, I can completely understand that. But thank you for watching my show. I really appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any other shows. All right, so we will get into some more of your comments in a little bit, but I just want to kind of talk about the positives. I know, like, if you're not really, this season hasn't been great, from your perspective. I don't think it's been good for anybody's perspective, but I just want to kind of talk about the positives of yesterday's game, because I think there were some. We got 3 goals, early on in the season, we really struggled to score goals. And, since Christmas, we've been scoring a lot more. So I thought that was a positive. It was a confidence boost for players like Thomas, Ceballos, and Pepe in particular. I think, Thomas has really been underwhelming in terms of, the amount of time that he's been able to play for us, the amount of minutes that he's been able to put in since being an Arsenal player. But ultimately, I think that he needs time to adapt like any other player, and he will come good eventually. But we need him to be confident going into the second leg against Slavia Prague, which I'm sure that he will start. Ceballos as well. Like, I know Ceballos is not, he's probably not somebody that we should bring in permanently. And he's been pretty inconsistent this season and pretty disappointing. But, if something happens to Xhaka or Thomas, we need to have players that are confident coming in, to fill in for them towards the end of the season. And, Ceballos is one of those. The last couple of games that he played, he just lacked confidence. So he had a very good performance yet in yesterday's game. And I think that only bodes well for us in the rest of the season if he ends up playing. Pepe as well. I think in the beginning of the game, he was a little sloppy, seemed a little weak, but you can't expect Pepe to come in 20 minutes here, 40 minutes there, 10 minutes there, not play there, and not start very many games, and then just play amazing from the beginning. It's just a little, unrealistic. But I think from what he did show, I think he's a really dangerous player, and he's somebody that I would consider playing in Thursday's game. Let's see what you guys are saying. Boo Boo Baba says, how do you quantify progress? For me, I can see progress past results because our underlying metrics since Boxing Day say that we should be in sixth or seventh place. So, from what I've seen, the style of play, the fact that the players seem more comfortable in the system to a certain extent, the fact that we're not struggling to score goals, those are things that I can see as progress, but I can understand why sitting in ninth, is not progress for others. Some people can only see results I can see outside of it, but I didn't see progress before Boxing Day. I think having a 10, having Odegaard and ESR involved in the team has made it easier for me to see what Arteta is trying to accomplish. So I quantify progress from the underlying metrics in my personal eye test. But again, I can understand if you can only see it through results. Kings of 75 says, hi, it's Europa League or bust. Thursday's game matters a lot. Of course, it's another final. Every single game that we are involved in the Europa League from now until the end of the season is a final. So it's definitely, the biggest game for us going forward. Kesh says, what's your thoughts on Xhaka's performance at left back? I think he did a good job. We need to find another solution other than Cedric. I think Cedric deputized well for Kieran Tierney to a certain extent for, some of the games throughout the season that Tierney wasn't available. But the right footer on the left-handed side to me is a clear red flag. And it's something that if I was the opposition, I would target. And I don't think we want to make ourselves any more vulnerable by having him in that position going forward. He just hasn't been great there since the Aston Villa game. That I think it was the breaking point for him in terms of playing that position and just not really doing a good job. So for me, I think we need to find another solution that's not Saka. Before the game, we were all kind of saying that maybe you play Saka there. But I think we can see that he's so important to our attack that it would be almost like shooting ourselves in the foot, putting him back there, at left back. So I thought Xhaka did a really good job. He knew what the role was. Also, I think it helped that Sheffield is a pretty slow team. I think Xhaka's positional awareness has become a lot better since Arteta has come in. So he wasn't exposed as much as he usually is. And if he does play there moving forward, his positioning needs to be good. But we also need to be really aware of the fact that he's not fast. So, I think we could do it against Slavia Prague if that's why we were kind of practicing it. But I wouldn't do it all the time because, again, it's probably something that if I was the opposition, I'd be looking at like, let's get in behind this guy. He's pretty slow, but I think he did really well. A quietly good, solid performance. Some of his switches were really nice. That's what I saw when I rewatched the game. Was I really liked the switch of play. So I think he played well there. You guys let me know, is that something you'd like to see moving forward? If you had to choose right now between Cedric or Xhaka playing on Thursday at left back, who would you choose? Mark says, for me, Ceballos has so much potential. Remember, he is so young, so hopefully the consistency will soon be added to his talent. I mean, I think ultimately what we've seen from him as in an Arsenal shirt is the reason why he's not playing for Real Madrid is the inconsistency, and he's pretty hard-headed. I like Ceballos. I'm a big fan of Ceballos, but I think he tends to lean towards what he wants to do versus what's right for the team. He takes too many touches, and if you think you're going to get into that Real Madrid midfield, you need to be a little bit more I think he needs to grow up and mature a little bit more. That being said, I do agree with you that he has a lot of potential and he's a really good player. I just don't know if it's adding up to this point. I really sympathize with him because I think he's a really good player and he was really good for the Spanish under 21 team. But I would be really, really shocked if he was able to make the Spain team for the Euros. And it has to be really disheartening for him to have spent 2 years at Arsenal, knowing now that you're probably not going to make the Spanish team for the Euros, and your future is still in the balance. Real Madrid has put him on the transfer list. We've known for a while that if somebody will offer a good amount of money for him, he could go. So, his future is really in the balance. And as a 24-year-old, that has to be a little disheartening and uncomfortable for him. Okay, so let's move forward just a little bit. Here, I just want to read this really quick. You guys, I'll get to the questions a little bit later on. I just want to get through some of like the team news and talk about Martinelli in particular and the Sun article, and then we'll do Q&A if that's okay with you guys. Glenn says Cedric with Xhaka on the left. There's literally no attack threat from that side. That's very true. And Yo-Yo says Xhaka often drops into defense and possession while starting the midfield. Yes, this is something that we've seen before. And Stuart says Cedric, I think Party needs his partner. Okay, I like that. Okay, so another, one of the positives I thought from this game was Martinelli, seeing him play, seeing him fit. He had 3 shots and 1 key pass, and obviously a very, it was a tap in, but I think it was a much deserved goal for him. Arteta insists that Martinelli is on the right pathway and development, and we need to just give him the right amount of time in the right games. And I personally agree with this. I've always said that I think Arteta is thinking about the long-term future of Martinelli, and I can't see Edu sitting by watching Arteta do something that would be detrimental to Martinelli's future when Edu is Brazilian, very close with the Brazilian national team coach, and I don't think he would allow Martinelli's career to slide on his watch. I think they're just trying to make sure that they are allowing him to develop on his own terms and not put him under too much pressure too early. And he talked about in the press conference afterwards, Arteta did, that we have a lot of 19 and 20-year-olds that compared to other Premier League teams, which I think is true, and it's uncommon. I think other teams have 19 and 20-year-olds integrated within their squad, but they're not in positions of where there's a lot of weight and responsibility put on their shoulders. And Arteta did call him an amazing talent. This doesn't sound like a manager that has some crazy vendetta against Martinelli, which has been kind of the narrative around the Arsenal fan base since the beginning of the season, and actually going back to lockdown after lockdown, that Arteta just doesn't rate Martinelli and he's, purposefully stifling his career for some reason or just doesn't like him. This doesn't sound like a manager that's trying to stifle somebody's career. It sounds like somebody who's trying to protect somebody's career. We should not be relying on this amount of 19 and 20-year-olds at Arsenal Football Club. It is uncommon, and not really when you have players like Aubameyang and Lacazette and even William, players like that are on 300 grand a week, 200 grand a week, tons of experience, 30 and above. They should be able to carry this team, and the 19 and 20-year-olds should be able to develop on their own terms, and they haven't been able to because the team is just not good enough. So I don't think we need another 19-year-old that we are placing a lot of responsibility on when you have a player like Aubameyang who should be able to score 20-something goals this season. We never question somebody like Pep, who has went above and beyond to make sure that he eases Phil Foden into the Manchester City side. Foden probably could have been playing for Man City a lot sooner, but Pep made sure that he nurtured him and allowed him to develop on his own terms. And now he's in the squad at the perfect time, and he's not getting injured, he's not overplayed, and he doesn't have too much responsibility. So, I think he's doing the right things and I've never had a real issue with it. But yeah, I think it's fine. I really, really do. Let me just see this because I see a comment here. C. Wilder says it could be argued that the same approach has helped Foden. Exactly. Although that's kind of unquantifiable. Exactly. You can't really quantify it, but I think it's coming from the same school of thought that this is going to be a really important player for me moving forward. So let me not break him. Let me not break him now. We have Lacazette and Aubameyang who on paper should be able to carry, the majority of the goal threat this entire season. They haven't been able to, but they should be able to, if that makes sense. So Charles Watts asked if it would be difficult to drop Martinelli on Thursday, and of course Arteta didn't really respond. He laughed it off, but Gabby also hinted that he was fine for Thursday after his injury scare. I was afraid that when he went down, when he was taken out, that there was something there, but it seems like he's fine. Personally, against Slavia Prague, I would start Martinelli. I think without Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, and Odegaard in the side, potentially, we will lack the aggression, running power, movement, energy that we need. Without that in our side, we're pretty stagnant, we're pretty slow, and the football is just not the same. I remember back when we first started the season, and Arteta was trying to play Aubameyang, Lacazette, and Willian, which I think is a potential front three for Thursday. It just didn't work, and it doesn't work. It's too slow. It's too stagnant. It's just not enough energy. So if we don't have Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, and potentially Odegaard, I think Martinelli has to start to give us that energy that we need and the running in behind that we don't necessarily get from the others. But what did you guys think about Martinelli's performance yesterday? Again, he has, 3 shots on goal, 1 key pass, and a goal. I think that that's a pretty good return, after being out for so long and actually playing the majority of the game. Lone Star Londoner says Martinelli will be a superstar. I agree. Yo-Yo says, look at the players ahead of Foden. Martinelli saw Willian stink out the place. I mean, yes, I get that, but realistically able to perform better than what he has. So when I'm looking at Arteta making these decisions, I think it's from the perspective of I got to give these senior players more time to get it together because I don't want to put this on Martinelli. Because once we see him and we see that he's fine, because I don't think Arteta ever said that he couldn't play. He just needed to ease him in and to give him time. So once you see him, you're going to want him to play all the time. And for me, the last thing I would like to see is Martinelli make a huge mistake or for him not to play well. Because again, he's getting used to playing in the league. He's getting used to playing in the system. And Arsenal fans turn on him. I mean, even Saka, to a certain extent, when he misses goals, or even Emile Smith-Rowe had a couple of, inconsistent performances, you could see the fans starting to press those buttons to say, oh, is he even good enough? He's not playing well. And I don't think Arteta wants that same pressure on Martinelli. Aubameyang, Willian, and Lacazette should be able to score enough goals in this team to allow Martinelli to develop on his own time. I believe that 110%. Stuart says that made me laugh when he said, I'm ready to play on Thursday, dropping hits. Exactly. I mean, the guy wants to play. You can tell that he has a certain type of personality where he wants to be involved. He puts a lot of responsibility on himself, and I think that that's also a reason why Arteta is trying to ease him in, is because he knows he's all guns blazing. He's 110%, all gas, no brakes all the time. So although we love that about Martinelli, we also have to harness that a little bit, because that is the same energy that will have him re-aggravate his knee or burn out or something like that. Let's see. DC Fly says Martinelli looked good and tried to make things happen whenever he got the ball. He's not afraid to look for a shot. I thought that was a nice change to have somebody that took responsibility and wanted to take shots. I think some of our strikers have been hiding this season and have passed the ball off to midfielders and even defenders at certain parts of the game instead of looking for shots. So I like that energy and confidence from Martinelli. Don't waste the tweet said, haven't the senior players shown they can't get the job done? We don't have enough games left for them to figure it out. But I think that that's why Arteta has integrated, try to play Martinelli now, has brought in Emil Smith Rowe. So we can't say that he hasn't brought in the young players. It's just Martinelli in particular that he's held back from. And can you really blame him when he's coming back from basically an ACL injury? It takes 2 years for you to get 110% ready after that to be fit, and that's talking about being able to get out on the pitch. We're not talking about getting match fit, so Martinelli is somebody who injured himself in warm up because he was practicing or wanting to play so badly. So Martinelli, I think, is a special circumstance that we just have to kind of let go. I know the get him out there because we feel like he's the one that's going to change everything, but I understand why Arteta is hesitant, and you can't say that Arteta hasn't integrated kids before, so I think having Smith Rowe and Saka, two young players that we're placing a lot of responsibility on up to at this point, I think that's enough. I really think that's enough. I think we need to ask the senior players to step up, and put more pressure on them instead of trying to put pressure on Arteta to put a lot of responsibility on a 19-year-old. Seawalder says Charles Watts, big up, cornering Arteta, loved it. I thought it was funny too because Arteta was like, so you're trying to pressure me, but sometimes I wish that they would press Arteta a little bit more, or just press managers a little bit more and try to get better answers for them because they're really good at the media trained answers, and he tried to squeeze that out of him, but he didn't say no, so Martinelli may play. Lone Star says we all want Martinelli in this team. I get that. I 100% get that. So, yeah, I think we all can agree that he had a really good performance. Hold on real quick, you guys. Let me fix my camera. It's a little blurry for my liking. That's better. So, yeah, I think we can all agree that Martinelli had a good performance yesterday. Arteta also talked about the importance of the clean sheet. I think that we spoke a lot about the offense in this game, but the clean sheet was also a good thing. We haven't had one in like 14 games, which is horrendous. But the combination of Holding and Marie, it just kind of works. They seem to have really good chemistry. And a couple of weeks ago, it seemed like we had kind of figured it out. We had a rhythm. Marie and Holding play in the Premier League, and Gabrielle and Louise play in Europe. But obviously, with the injuries to Holding, with his concussion, and Louise with his long-term injury, those partnerships have been strained. Gabrielle had a kind of difficult game against Slavia Prague. And, I just wanted to ask you guys, would you start Gabrielle against Slavia Prague, or would you keep the combination of Marie and Holding and keep that chemistry going? I want to let just kind of give it to you guys and see what you think. I think it's really it's unfortunate that we don't have Louise available to us for the rest of the season, but it's also kind of disheartening that we rely on him so much. A player on the wrong side of 30 that we kind of know has a lot of mistakes in him, but regardless of that, I think we kind of hurt without him. And Holding is not similar to him in any way. Holding is a low block defender, and Louise is more of a possession based, which is more conducive to the way that we play. And I think Holding struggles with the distribution out of the back. But when him and Marie play together, it seems like they have a good balance of, I think Marie's more the leader when they play together. Holding is a little bit more of the follower. I think that works. And they just seem to get each other a lot more. I think Gabrielle and Holding, that's probably our weakest partnership, so I'm a little apprehensive to rip apart what works and put Gabrielle in there. What do you guys think? Let's see. Yo-Yo says Sheffield has only scored 17 goals in the Prem. The weekend game means little. Yeah, I don't really agree with that. I think, just to kind of sidebar with this kind of thought process of the games in the league don't matter. Every game matters. If we had lost that game, it would have been the biggest thing to talk about. So you can't say in one breath that it doesn't mean anything, but if we would have lost it, Arsenal fans would have been really, really disappointed. So from a confidence perspective, from a consistency perspective, going into Thursday, I think this game meant a lot more than people are willing to give it credit for. Of course, Sheffield's not a good team. Of course, Sheffield can't score goals. Of course, it wasn't the most, dangerous opponent that we could have played against. But in the grand scheme of like where we are and, the type of games that we played against Liverpool and Slavia Prague, the Sheffield game couldn't have come at a better time to have a dominating performance over a team, get 3 goals against them, get a clean sheet, and have players like Partey and Ceballos and Pepe, players that are going to play for us, and have either bit part roles, modified roles or big roles going forward in the season. I can't say that this game didn't mean anything, and none of the games, following this, the Premier League games, they don't mean anything. They may not have a lot of, jeopardy in terms of where we finish in the league, but they do mean something. So I have to disagree with you on that, Yo-Yo. Ravi says Arsenal need to play their strongest team that they have present. Europa is all you Gunners have. If you get knocked out, that's it till the next season. Yeah, I think that's kind of, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yo-Yo Holding did find joy on the ball versus Slavia. He did. He did, but do you play Gabriel or do you play Marie? I think Holding is the obvious option there because he's our only option there. But do you play Marie, who he plays well with, or do you play Gabriel? Stuart says a win is a win. Exactly. I think this idea that when we win games that we're supposed to win, we're supposed to do that, and Europa's the only thing that matters. A win, a decisive win before the biggest game of our season is important. Wins breed confidence, period. DJ Tucci says, or Touchy, I'm not sure which one it is, use Pablo and Gabriel for this game, Cedric right back and Saka left back. To use a partnership that we've never used in the most important game of our season, I would not do. I get the sentiment that those are probably our best 2 center backs, but in terms of a pairing, we've never seen it before. So I think that's a little risky for a really important game. I do agree with, Cedric at right back, maybe Chambers. I think he's played well. And Saka at left back. I think I'd rather see Xhaka play there again, if I'm honest. DC Fly says, I like Marie, but I want to see Gabriel on Thursday. I think he's our best overall defender. I think that too. I think he's our best overall defender, but the combination of him and Holding to me just doesn't work for some reason. Arson's Disciple says yesterday was a combination of back 3 and 4 with Marie taking the central responsibility. I think we should play the same with Gabby replacing Marie. That's a good point. Maybe we just play that shift back 3, back 4, and just replace Gabrielle with, or replace Marie with Gabrielle. So you're saying bring Gabrielle in and take Marie out. Stuart said, I'm interested to see who our first team defense and forward lineup will look like next season. I am too. I can't wait till next season. It's so unfortunate to feel, the second season in a row that I'm just kind of waiting for it to be over. I love doing these streams. I love talking to you guys. And ultimately, I love watching Arsenal play. But feeling like there's not a lot to play for in the league. And, there's a good top 4 title race going. Europa League is still quite open. To see that we're not even involved in that is kind of devastating. So for the second year in a row, the league season not meaning a lot, a couple of weeks in terms of, results and, our ability to move up. It's just it's disheartening. It's disheartening, but I am interested to see what we look like next season. Scott Smith says, if Aubameyang genuinely has the flu, there's no way he can play Thursday. Martinelli should start. Arteta did say that, he's hoping to have him back. So it's probably a short flu or a flu that wasn't that bad. I don't know. Yeah, Xhaka left back again for me. Yeah, I would. I would do it again. Lone Star says, Aubameyang does not have the flu. Don't believe the lies. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of flu this was, but hey. Maxwell says Saliba has to be in that back four. Yeah, next season for sure. So, yeah, so just moving on to a little bit of team news. Arteta did say Saka has discomfort in his thigh, so we're not really sure if he's going to be able to play on Thursday. Smith Rowe and Odegaard are also going to be assessed. So I think it's going to be really difficult for difficult game for us if none of those players are available, because that really cuts into our creativity, and we already don't have a very creative team. So one of Saka, Emil Smith Rowe, and Odegaard need to be available. I think at least one of them will be. I'm hoping that at least one of them will be, if not more of them. But again, that has to be assessed. Arteta did say hopefully Aubameyang will be okay. So there's that. So I think he will play on Thursday. I think that this was just an excuse so that we could drop him without it being a big thing. And Tierney and Louise obviously out for the season. That was obviously explained again from Arteta in his press conference. But I just wanted to talk a little. Whew, okay. Oh, I don't know what just happened. My internet went out. So yeah, that my internet has never went out. But I'm using the hotspot on my phone. So I'm gonna have to hurry this up just a little bit. But I'm sorry, you guys. Can you guys see me and hear me okay? Let me know in the comment section. So, oh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm sorry you can hear me. Can you guys see me now? Can you guys hear me and see me? Just let me know, because I'm freaking out a little bit. Just a little bit. Oh no. Can you see me and hear me? Just say yes, I can hear you, or whatever. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Lacazette got his 50th goal for Arsenal, and very few players in the Emirates era have gotten 50 goals. Arteta also said that he saw a big change in Lacazette's attitude, and in the last 6 or 7 months, and he saw a lot of development in his leadership qualities. Lacazette is a really difficult player to analyze, because I think the expectation of him was to be better than Giroud, to get more goals than Giroud, and he obviously hasn't really hit those heights. I think we wanted him to be more like Aubameyang in terms of goal scoring and clinical ability. Hold on. Let me see. Okay. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to keep going and hopefully things fix up. So this is not the right camera. It feels so much different. So, Lacazette's just really difficult to quantify to me. So do you think that Lacazette's he gets unfair criticism? He's sometimes he looks really, really dangerous, and he looks really, really dangerous, and he looks like a world-class striker one day, and he looks painfully out of form the next. So I'm not really sure how to quantify whether he's been a good signing for us or not. He just got his 50th goal, which a lot of players have not been able to do. How do you guys feel about Lacazette and his career so far at Arsenal? And is the criticism of him unfair? You know, I see so many people that just think Lacazette has been horrendous, but I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think he's been brought in under false pretenses, or an expectation that was never realistic for him. I know at Lyon he got a lot of goals, and he was like a 20 plus goal a season type striker, but he was also playing every single game, and he was taking all the penalties. So when you don't take all the penalties, that could take away like 10 goals or so in a season. He was the guy at Lyon, but he comes to Arsenal, and then 6 months later you bring in Aubameyang. Then you're trying to figure out a way to play those two together, and it just doesn't work. I think up until this point we can say that has not worked. So I don't know. He had a really bad spell last season where his away goal record was horrendous, and he looked really out of form when he had his ankle injury. But then just like a couple months prior to that, he was our player of the season. So has he been a success, or has he been a failure? It's so difficult to analyze Lacazette. He's a player that I really like and I think plays really hard, but has had a difficult time, at Arsenal. Johnny Boy says the context Laka was mediocrity. He has done well in a failing setup. I mean, have we built the team around our Lacazette to be good? I don't think we've really built the team around anybody or brought in players with any sort of idea around how we're going to build the squad in the future. How do you bring in Lacazette and then bring in Aubameyang right after that? I just don't understand that. Either wait and bring in Aubameyang or bring in Lacazette and build the team around him. He's a certain type of striker, and we're seeing his qualities now, but we've never played to those strengths up until now. So it's kind of annoying, seeing his career come to pretty much an end at Arsenal. I think we can all kind of agree that maybe he shouldn't be re-signed, or I mean, if you think he should, let me know. But he's a player that I feel like has to play right now, but some people just really don't like Lacazette. I don't know. Seawalder says, I think he's got lots to his game and he still brings even when the goals dry up. I think so too. And I think moving forward, whatever striker we bring in or whatever strikers comes up in Balogun or Martinelli has to have those types of qualities. They have to be able to be a part of build-up. They need to be able to be a part of build-up. They need to be able to pass and help us in deeper positions. So I don't want another Aubameyang, or I'm starting to feel like the upgrade needs to be somebody closer to Lacazette. All right, let's see if this Wi-Fi works real quick, you guys. Let me see, because this hotspot is scary to me. I've literally never had bad internet before. Literally, I don't know what's going on. I'm so devastated by this, but I will continue to do this until I need to finish the stream. I need to finish. I know. Did he Gal give me his Wi-Fi? I don't know. This is just horrendous. Ugh, I'm so sorry, you guys. Um, but yeah, Lacazette, just a really difficult player to analyze because, he's been so up and down, but I do think he's been harshly criticized. And yeah, I think he made it a little bit more difficult to justify starting Aubameyang on Thursday by scoring two really good goals yesterday. So I know Aubameyang's the big player and we spent the money on him, but I think Lacazette has been a lot more consistent lately, and we're just always hoping that Aubameyang is going to show up, and he hasn't since the North London derby, and that was about 4 games ago. So that's really unfortunate. Stuart says keep or sell. I mean, I think we have to sell him. I'd prefer to get some money for him. And the only other option is to let him run his deal down. We cannot re-sign Aubameyang or Lacazette at this point. I really just think that would be a huge mistake. Johnny Boy says it was a panic and reflex buying with no long-term plan. Why blame the ownership short-term self-enrichment policy? Yeah, I just think when you buy Lacazette and then 6 months later you buy Aubameyang, it's just a mistake. Like, there's no squad building thought process to that. And even though we've kind of convinced ourselves that they can play together, it's never really been a fruitful combination. It's never really had chemistry. And I think when you get rid of Alexis, which is who left right before we brought in Aubameyang, you get like for like. Aubameyang is not like Alexis at all. If you bring in another winger similar to Alexis, somebody like Martinelli, they could play well with Lacazette. So I think he's honestly just a victim of poor squad building, and he's been relatively successful despite how badly the club has been building the squad over the years. Yep. So let's move on a little bit to the Sun article. This is I wanted to touch on this. I know it's been a couple of days, maybe 2 days since this article has come out. And of course it's the Sun, so we know we have to take it with a grain of salt. May not be true, may just be some paper talk. But I think it's interesting. The headline was, let me pull it up here. Arsenal stars turn on Mikel Arteta with players furious that they are being blamed for Gunners' nightmare season. Senior stars are increasingly frustrated at the way the boss Arteta has been able to paint a picture that the fault for the side's poor season is all down to them. It is the first sign of cracks beginning to appear within the Emirates over the way Arteta has gone about his job in the 15 months that he has been in charge. They are questioning why he happily reveled in leading the club to the FA Cup glory last season, but is not too keen on taking responsibility for poor games. Instead, they believe he responds to disappointing results by often leaving out a big name the following week, leaving the impression that an individual player is culpable. Skipper Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang was mentioned in this. So we'll get into it. And then Thomas Partey was also mentioned in this. And they think the club have allowed the public perception to become one where they are letting the boss down. So what do you guys think about that? I know that it's the Sun, and obviously we have to take it with a grain of salt, but what do you think about this just in terms of like a subject matter of, Arteta is definitely different than Arsene in certain ways. I think he does protect the players, but not the same way as Arsene. Arsene protected the players to a fault. Everything was put on Arsene's shoulders. Arteta will protect them in the press to a certain extent. He will say that we just didn't, do the game plan. The tactics weren't followed out. We were poor. He will say things like that. He never really calls out individual players. The only time I remember him doing so was Pepe with the red card. But, then people get dropped. and Aubameyang has been dropped in several games recently. And I can't help but think that this is just all tied up in him ever since the North London derby. And it's just I feel like Arteta has taken a lot of responsibility. He says a lot of times that it's his fault, and he doesn't throw the players under the bus, but then behind closed doors, there seems to be a level of accountability, given to the players, and that results in them being dropped. And the only big name players that I can think of that have been dropped lately, probably having to do with performances or whatever, have been Willian and Aubameyang. And I think both of them have been poor this season, regardless of what the reasonings are, adaptation, the system, the tactics, whatever. I think ultimately they have been poor. And when they've been dropped, it has seemed like it was valid dropping. The level of you know, player responsibility, I don't think there's been enough of it at Arsenal. I think we have a very weak mentality and a soft culture where the players get away with murder. I think there are times where players should be, taken off at halftime when they're playing like crap, and then they get dropped the next game. And then articles like this from The Sun come out talking about, and I know it's The Sun, but I think the players need to take more responsibility. Arteta is a new manager. Let's look at it this way. Arteta is a new manager who's never done this in his life. So he's going to make mistakes. Aubameyang and Willian have been playing football for over 10 years now. They're experienced in their career. So actually, I think they should be, taking responsibility for playing like crap, because we should have higher expectations for them. Whereas the expectations for Arteta, I think, are valid, but we can give him a little bit more wiggle room because he's never done this before. So this idea that, the manager should take all the responsibility, I think is something that Arsene put in place that has kept the players from having to perform, because they know they're never going to get dropped and the manager is always going to protect them. I think those days at Arsenal need to be over. I think they need to take more responsibility. The other day, a couple games ago, Tuchel took Callum Hudson-Odoi out, and I think it was a sub for a sub. I think he literally subbed him in, subbed him out after 30 minutes and he said straight up, I didn't like his body language. He wasn't carrying out, the instructions that we had talked about. So I took him out. Even he talked about Tammy the other day, that he was really ruthless in saying, I don't care what Tammy did before I got here. I don't care what he did in the past. He's not the striker that I'm choosing at the moment. So, and nobody really questions it, even though Werner is not scoring goals. So I think there is a soft culture at Arsenal that needs to be retuned. The players need to take more responsibility. I would expect Willian, Lacazette, Aubameyang, Xhaka, Luiz, these types of players that have been around for a long period of time, even Thomas, and Bellerin, to do their job, regardless to if things are not perfect. I think the sun has to be, or the temperature has to be perfect. The sun has to be out. They have to be in the position that they like. They have to have had the right meal. Everything has to be perfect for them to perform in a certain way. And I think regardless, rain or shine, whether you like it or not, you need to be playing for this football club, and if you don't, you should be dropped, so I don't really understand this level of they should just be able to do whatever, and the coach should take all the responsibility, even though he does. I think Arteta takes a lot of it in the press. There still needs to be accountability behind closed doors. I think that's the only aspect of things that should be carried out. Like in the press, I don't think he should go after the players, but behind closed doors, of course, if they're not, then what's the point? What's the point if they're not going to be given any sort of responsibility that makes sense, So yeah, and I think Arteta kind of lives in a black and white type of world, where this is wrong and this is right. And he takes a very authoritarian approach to things, whether you like that or not. That's up to you. I think his man management in certain aspects has left a little bit to be desired, or a lot to be desired. But I think Arsenal have been living in a gray area, whereas Arteta lives in black and white. You do this or you're dropped. and Arsenal have been living in a gray area where it's you get dropped if you're a certain player, but if you're getting paid a certain amount or if you're a star player or you are a player that we feel like we need, you never get dropped. And I think that that's the type of culture that puts you in a position where you're in ninth place and outside of European competition and so far away from where you used to be. But what do you guys think about it? Hey, Tawana. Johnny says if they choose not to perform, it's on them and they need to be dropped and not played again with nothing said. I mean, I think that that's just what it is. Like, I don't really understand this culture of you never get dropped. I think that's just silly and unrealistic. So even if this is not true, I think this speaks to the culture that has been at Arsenal for a long time. And although I love Arsene, and I think, of course, I love Arsene, he's the guy. I get that, but I think he protected the players too much, and put them in a position where they feel like now, why am I being dropped? I'm the biggest player at the club. The biggest player never gets dropped. You make excuses for me, even when I don't play well. That's not happening anymore. And I think that that's a good thing. Yo-Yo says, Abba Willian were dropped briefly. When shit hits the fan, Arteta returns to type and looks to them often in previous Europa ties. He's invested too much time in them to justify his cowardice. He has leaned into the senior players, and that's been something that I feel like has been a hindrance for us this season. But it's like the options are play the senior players and hope that they gain form and earn the money that they're being paid, or put a lot of responsibility on 19 and 20-year-olds that are not experienced in a situation where we are in a dire scenario. So he's between a rock and a hard place. And I think if you asked most coaches what they would do, they would say, I would lean into the senior players, and they've let him down. I don't think they'll have as much leash when there's different players available, but when the players are either 30 years old, experienced, and being paid 300 grand a week, and the other option is a 19-year-old or 19-year-olds that haven't really played first team football that much, in like Emile Smith Rowe, or even, Saka up until this point has been playing left back. Now he's playing up top, and Martinelli only played, he played last season, but not a lot. I think that's a hard place to be in. Lone Star says nobody cares what players have supposedly said. I mean, I think they do, because this was a big topic of conversation. So you may not care, but I think that this is just an important concept to talk about, because it's a culture shift that is changing, and I don't think some of the players that we have now are going to be able to hack it, because they don't want responsibility. Let's see. Emmanuel says, what coach do you think embodies the balance between a non-protective Mourinho and an overprotective Arsene? Ooh, that's a big question. To be honest, I'm not really sure. I would have to go back and think about it. But, I think there are probably managers like that. The managers that trust their players and back their players are in different positions than we are, like Klopp. And so I don't think they have to like crap on their players as much, or they're not as disappointed in their players as often as Arteta is. So that's a really good question, but I would really have to think about it. Klopp, I think he takes a lot of responsibility on, but I think he expects a lot from his players. And I think his players, for the most part, do what they're told and try to do as best as they can. They're having a hard time now, but Arteta's in a really bad spot, so it's, do I protect them and play them because I feel like I have to, or do they drop them and then still have people complaining about why is Aubameyang not playing? Obez says, play and trust the youngsters. I mean, he's been doing that since Boxing Day. That's what he's been doing. Q&A, Jess, thoughts on Pepe. Do you think that he's been given enough opportunities, and what would you do with him? Give me one sec. We are going to get to that. So, yeah, you guys let me know. I know that it's kind of like it's paper talk, who cares? But the aspect of the culture shifting from being overprotective of the players to actually having responsibility and accountability behind the scenes. Do you think that's fair or not? But before we do the Q&A, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Um, Make sure that you're following She Knows Arsenal on Instagram. My instant reactions are always going to be on there from now on after the game. They've actually been going really well. And I like having, you guys join me on YouTube as well as Instagram. So again, just make sure that you're following She Knows Arsenal on Instagram so you don't miss the instant reactions immediately following the game. The post-match show will be right here for Sheffield. The Sheffield game will be here on this channel and on the Bearded Gooners channel tonight at 7 p.m. UK time. And my special guest is FK from the Latte Firm. So make sure you're subscribed so you get notifications for that. I have notes, sorry. From now on, I'll be doing these 3 p.m. streams every day except for game days. So I noticed that you guys really like when we just have like a kind of, relaxed chat about different things and you guys get a chance to get in the chat box and ask questions. So we'll be doing these every day at 3 p.m. UK time except for game days. And tomorrow will be just a live Q&A. So if you don't get your question answered today, just come back tomorrow and I'll try to get to you then. And hopefully I won't have dodgy internet because that has been a complete headache for me. So yeah, but make sure that you guys are subscribed for that as well. And lastly, tomorrow at 6 p.m. UK time, Harry Symeou will be on the show and we'll be previewing the big European fixtures, including Bayern versus PSG. So we'll be talking about that in the European fixtures. And of course, we'll probably get to some Arsenal talk, but that is the housekeeping for today. So let's get into the questions. Yeah, you guys just go ahead and put in your questions. I'm going to roll up to the top really quick because I know that there were some questions earlier. So yeah, but just go ahead and start dropping your questions and make sure that they're obvious, so that I don't miss them. But King Saint Gammy and Gunnar asked me about Pepe. And do I think that he has been given enough opportunities and what would I do with him? Ooh, this is really a tough question because I think that there's a level of distrust with Arteta and Pepe, and I think it really stems from the fact that Pepe is not his player. A lot of managers, they come into their situation and they kind of pick players that they like and players that they don't. I don't think naturally Pepe is the type of player that fits in Arteta's long-term system. That being said, I think he respects his talent, but there's a level of distrust that creeped in after that Leeds game that I think really broke that kind of relationship, which I can understand. I give you an opportunity to start after a lot of fans had been saying, start him, and then you get a red card. So from there, it seems like Arteta has been a little hesitant to start him in multiple games. And the games that he usually does start are games like after European fixtures or, games like the Sheffield game. And we're not really seeing a lot of him. I think Pepe is the type of player that needs a good run of games to really get his legs going and really get into the groove. He looks really dangerous now, but when he was getting a better run of games after Boxing Day, when we were playing with Lacazette, Saka, Pepe, Emil Smith-Rowe, he was scoring goals. Now, I think that the goals are a little bit fewer and far between because he doesn't have that confidence and he hasn't been playing as much. So long story short, I don't think that he's been given enough opportunities, but I think some of that has been with his own making, because when he gets out there, he doesn't finish. And when the Leeds game, I think, really hurt him, getting that red card. So what would I do with him long term? I would give him another season, but if somebody offered us 30 million for him this summer, I wouldn't be surprised if the club took it. And I also would, if it was me, I'd probably take it. The reason why I'm saying that is because I don't know if Arteta sees him as a part of his plans. So rather than let his value go down more, I would rather get as much as I possibly can for him now. If Arteta sees that there's an opportunity for him to maybe work his way into a rotational position or a starting position later on, I think I would keep him for another season because I think he has some value and he has talent that nobody else on our team really has. He's a good scorer, finisher type of forward, and we don't have enough of that. But the problem is in order for him to get into that goal scoring form, he needs to have more playing time. So is Arteta going to give him that? I'm not sure, but I hope I answered that question. And thank you, for sending that question in. Opuram Philem says, do you think that Arteta needs a more experienced assistant coach? I've thought about this so many times. Like, what are they doing back there? You have Steve Round, you have the other guy that's like Dutch, I believe. You guys will correct me, obviously, but he's either Norwegian or Dutch. And he's always the guy that's like in Arteta's ear. And then you have that inexperienced or younger core of two really young guys that they brought in, one from Atletico and I think one from like Juventus or something like that. Or Manchester City. I'm not sure. They both came from places like that, but they're really young. And then you have Inaki, who's the goalkeeper coach, I think still. And then you have the guy that we took from Brentford. That's the set piece coach. I'm not sure if I necessarily feel like he needs more experienced staff. I think he needs a more experienced director of football that can tell him, you're going to play this player. Like, so the scenario in the summer about Saliba, Arteta may think that he wants a different type of right-sided center back. But, if I'm Adu and I'm more experienced and I can kind of put my foot down, I would say you're not getting another right-sided center back, so you need to bring Saliba back in. We spent 27 million on him, so try to integrate him into the squad, or else, you're not going to get a right-sided center back, something like that. I think more experienced people above, maybe Vinay and Adu to me are more of the issue than the coaching staff at this point. So if I thought that there was somebody more experienced that needs to be in and around Arteta and in his ear, I would pick the director of football and the people at the executive level. Yo-Yo says the money and time invested in Abba and Willian shows Arteta's lack of foresight and fearing the worst at the start of the season. He's made his bed. Yep. I agree, Yo-Yo, to a certain extent. Yo-Yo says, would injuries be a sufficient excuse for Arteta to fail in qualifying for Europe? No, I don't think the excuse would ever be injuries, because every single team has horrendous injuries this season. Who doesn't have horrendous injuries besides maybe Manchester City? Manchester United doesn't have any really bad injuries. But like if you look at like Liverpool, Everton, Leicester, Aston Villa now with Grealish being out, Declan Rice is now out for West Ham. Calvin Phillips was out for a significant amount of time for Leeds. Everybody's had big injuries. So no, that's not an excuse. I think, failing to qualify for Europe is a consequence of one, not being prepared at the beginning of the season, not having a single creative player available in the squad at the start of the season has been a big part of the failure. I'm not saying it's necessarily an excuse, but I just think it's a symptom, or it's a reason why we were not good at the beginning of the season. I think leaning into older players, but again, the options was either rely on Willian, Lacazette, and Aubameyang, three players that together cost 170 million, should have bags of experience between them, or leaning into 19 and 20-year-olds, because we really don't have anything in between. We really don't. We don't have anything in between the older players that are letting us down and the younger players that we don't want to put a lot of responsibility on. So injuries are not a sufficient excuse to not qualify for Europe at all. Everybody's had really bad injuries throughout the season. Emmanuel says, if I was in charge, what would make me fire Arteta? And would you take Zaha from Crystal Palace? So what would take me, I think so it depends, so let's say I'm in charge of Arsenal and I give Arteta enough, backing to bring in a creative midfielder, a right back, and another central midfielder. So let's say that we brought in, let's just be realistic. Let's say we brought in like Max Aarons, we brought in, Sanderberg or something like that, another center midfielder, and we brought in Odegaard. Let's just say I gave you that. If Arteta was not comfortably in the top 6 by Christmas, I would sack him. Because at that point, he's been sufficiently backed, in my opinion. So, that would make me sack him because up until this point, I think it's just a matter of he has a very imbalanced squad. He doesn't have enough of the pieces to play the type of football that he wants to. I know he said he's about 6 players away, but ultimately, if I give you 3 and you have good young players and you still have Aubameyang, you know, you need to bring in Saliba and kind of mend some fences and work with some of the pieces that you have. But if I give you that, you should be able to be comfortably in the top 6 at Christmas. If he's not, that's what would make me sack him. And I would sack him at Christmas and get somebody else in. And would I take Zaha from Crystal Palace? No, I wouldn't. I think he was the person that we should have brought in instead of Pepe, if that's what we were looking for a winger. I think it was really negligent and ridiculous for them not to give Emery the player that he wanted, because clearly they didn't want him to be successful. He wanted a left winger. You brought him a right winger. Zaha is primarily proven. Pepe is not. I get the age argument, but we were not going for a long-term project. Everything that we did in the Emery era was for now, was to get into the top 4 right now. So if you wanted to do that, you probably should have brought in Zaha. So the time has passed to bring in Zaha for me. I wouldn't even bring him in if they gave us a cut price deal for 30 million. I don't think we need wingers per se. I think we need to bring in a central midfielder, a creative midfielder, and a right back. And I would like to look more at maybe like a Manor Solomon or somebody like that to maybe fill in a winger position. Maybe even I would rather have Nkunku or somebody like that, somebody with some upside, if we're looking for a winger, but not Zaha. The time is really past for that. It's really unfortunate because I think he'd play well for us because obviously he's a childhood Arsenal fan, but no, I just don't think so. Velvishwan asks, Jess, why is Robertson better than Tierney, aka the Scottish Alberto Moreno? He's not. I think Tierney is better than Robertson. So, I think that. The question is invalid, not applicable. Arson's disciple says, we were ever love Willian. I think he is feeling the hate and it's affecting him a lot. Again, maybe the question is, will I ever love Willian or something like that? But just in regards to Willian, wow, Willian has been really bad this season. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a huge Brazil fan. I follow the national team, sometimes even more than the U.S. men's national team. And I'm shocked at how bad Willian has been. I don't think it was a good deal. I think the 3-year deal was really risky, and the amount of wages that he's on is really scary for a team like us that's trying to get the wage bill down and seemingly has shot ourselves in the foot in trying to do that. But I do think that Willian is getting a harsh lesson in the fact that being an Arsenal player is very different than being a Chelsea player, and the narrative surrounding Arsenal makes it more difficult to be mediocre. Willian has been a good servant for Chelsea and has been a consistent player. He's just been kind of like a consistent level, but he's never been great or magnificent or world class, but when you bring that mediocrity, to Arsenal, it's a lot harsher. The criticism is a lot harsher. The commentators are against you. The pundits are against you. They're questioning everything about you. And then the fans turn on you as well. So being an Arsenal player is much different than being a Chelsea player. I think David Luiz also felt that. Moving maybe a couple minutes north, doesn't really change that. Being an Arsenal player is completely different than being a Chelsea player. And you'll never get the same type of criticism. Even if you were crap there, you're even more crap at Arsenal, and the fans will let you know. But I think the fans, to a certain extent, need to remember that these people, they're human. And if you're getting constant criticism and you're being battered constantly by the fans, it'd be difficult for you to adapt, difficult for you to put in good performances. I know he's being paid to do this job, but he's human, and that would affect anybody, regardless to if you're, a garbage man, or you're Willian, So you know, uh, I don't think this will ever work out. I do think that this was a bad black mark on Edu and Arteta's CV. But I do agree with you. I think the hate is affecting him a lot, and hopefully, we can get at least some better performances. This was just a really bad deal, wasn't it? All right, let's see. Tawana asks, Balogun signing changes the striker situation. Which position combination would you prioritize? Cam and CM, left back and Cam, or right back and right wing? So if you're saying between, those ones, I think we need a creative midfielder more than we need another central midfielder. I think we need so let me just say, I think we need to prioritize the creative midfielder and the right back and the left back cover. I think those are the most important. And then if for some reason we're able to get, another central midfielder, I think that would be great. But right wing, I don't think is that important at the moment, because you have Pepe and Saka that can play there. So yeah, creative midfielder, right back, left back cover are most important for us moving forward. And Balogun does change the striker situation. I think that would allow us a little bit of wiggle room in the summer, not to have to immediately address that position. I think he needs to trust the youth. It's gonna be difficult, but if we're outside of Europe, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing with Balogun and Martinelli and Aubameyang, long in that season. And I think getting some experience under their belt will be good for us. So, yeah, Balogun, his situation does change the striker positions, and I would expect Nketiah and Lacazette to be out the door then if he stays. Arsenal Presser asks, do I think that the flip-flop nature of social media is having a negative effect on how we view Arteta and the team? I think if you consume a lot of content, Arsenal content on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, however you consume the content, I think it can take a toll on or it can manipulate how you feel about the team. And I do want people to have their own voice and their own thoughts. I try not to consume a lot of content when I'm about to do streams, when I'm about to do podcasts, because it does change the way you think about the team and Arteta. And we do flip-flop a lot. One game we think, oh, we're just a couple points away from so-and-so, we could get up into the top 6, and then we lose that game. And then all of a sudden the club is engulfed in flames, right? So I think it does have a negative effect on how we view Arteta and the team, because we're so, fandom really exists on the edges. It's really about absolute bliss and complete turmoil. It's never really in between. And it's not up to the fans to be balanced and non-reactionary. Fandom is reactionary. You're happy when you lose, happy when you win, and you're devastated when you lose. So I do think it has a negative effect, but ultimately, however you feel is however you feel, and you're validated for feeling that way, but I do think going from one to the other is making it hard for people to really analyze how we are, doing in our season so far. Stuart Oz says, would I take Lamptey from Brighton? No, I wouldn't. I think his injury this season is worrying. And I think Brighton will also ask for quite a bit of money for him that is probably not worth it. This is his first real season in the Premier League as a senior player. And not only has he been injury prone, but he hasn't shown, for me, enough, to warrant whatever price Brighton is going to want for him. Good player, really fast, aggressive, but can't defend. So, the whole aspect of Bellerin that, a lot of fans don't like is he can't defend. That's the narrative. He can't defend. Lamptey is just is just Bellerin before the injury, before his injury, before he lost pace. And he's also really short, and I don't think I would want a 5'5" right back who's not a great defender and is probably going to cost a lot of money that hasn't been able to finish out the season. So I like Lamptey. I think he's a good player. If we brought him in, I wouldn't be like crying about it. But I'd much rather see us bring in somebody like Emerson from Betis that's on loan from Barcelona. I think he's the physical stature that we're looking for. And if not him, maybe Max Aarons. It just depends, but not Lamptey. He's not my favorite. Let's see. Johnny Boy says, too many substandard squad players who need to be moved on. We cannot change whilst carrying the dead weight. Yeah, true. I think this summer is bringing players in is important, obviously, but getting players out is also important, and we just started the initial cull in January by moving on Ozil and Socrates and Mustafi, and hopefully we can make Kolasinac permanently, a permanent transfer out. It's going to be difficult because I know Schalke is going through trouble and they're probably going to get relegated, and his situation is really based on whether they stay up or not. If they stay up, then they'll buy him permanently, and they won't. So he'll be back at the Emirates. So, but if we can sell him and get rid of some more of these players, we need to make decisions on young players like Eddie and Ainsley Maitland-Niles. I think both of them need to be moved on, as well as Lacazette needs to be moved on. I think he's playing well this season, but I think that's even more reason to try to get a fee for him. And Bellerin as well, time to move him on. And then we'll kind of see where we are after that. But yeah, moving players out, the dead weight, players that just aren't going to make it at Arsenal. I think we need to make hard decisions and kind of move on. Yo-Yo asks, with Gabriel and Partey receiving greater criticism from recent performances, what makes you believe Arteta should be trusted with greater spending? Well, I don't really criticize Gabriel and Partey for their recent performances, because why would you expect players to come into a team that's underperforming, inconsistent, lacks mental stability, and is just underperforming in general? It's difficult for me to expect them to do well in a team. It depends on what kind of environment you come into. Gabriel and Thomas are coming in from teams that are playing well, that have good balance, that are playing for the manager, things like that, and then you come into a team that's, inconsistent, imbalanced, having tons of issues, so I don't really see it as an issue. I think it's more of we need to provide an environment for them to succeed. Thiago's not a crap player because he's had a difficult time at Liverpool. He came into a struggling Liverpool side. So as a result, he's struggling, it's like, look at Trent Alexander-Arnold, one of the best right backs, in the world, is now all of a sudden receiving a lot of criticism. But you can also look at the team and see that when they're playing bad, he doesn't play as good. So when Gabriel and Thomas come into a struggling Arsenal side, of course they don't look as good, but they're the right profile and the right type of players that we need to bring in. So I think Arteta and Edu did a really good job bringing in players that we've been asking for over a decade. The issue is Willian and re-signing Aubameyang. Those are two, those are more of the black marks for me that lead me to be distrustful of them, moving forward, not Thomas and Gabriel. The recent criticisms of their performances is just, how can you expect players to play well, when a team is just inconsistent and playing like crap? I think it's to be expected that they wouldn't play as well in an Arsenal side versus, the Lille side that they came from, or the Atletico side that they came from. Let's see what else. King Saint, Gabby and Gunnar says, realistic CM signing for Arsenal. What is your top 4 choices? Realistic. So let's say realistic is, let's say we spend the 50 million on Odegaard, right? So then realistic is probably something between 15 to 20 million. you know, for a central midfielder. We want to bring them in. I think we need to look at loans. I think we need to be smart. I would like Adu to go to South America maybe and look for, some under the radar signings. I know that we are linked with another Martinelli who plays central midfield, not related to the Martinelli that we have, but another Brazilian Martinelli that plays for Fluminense, or I think that's the name of the team. So, yeah. But if I just have to think off the top of my head, I would think maybe like a Sanderberg. I know that Sheffield thinks that they're going to get 35 million for him. No, you're not. Probably get around 20 for him. Maybe Sumari from Lille. I spoke to the Euro expert the other day, and he was talking about how they want to sell him on, but they're unrealistic about the price. But I think based on our relationships, we might be able to get him for 25, something like that. But those are the two that I can think of straight up off of the top of my head. But of course, moving into the summer window, I'll do more scouting, reports, and, more transfer videos where I can actually do some more research and think of sensible signings. But off of the top of my head, I would say Sumari from Lille or Sanderberg from Sheffield would be two options that I would look at. Let's see. Stuart says, would I buy St. Maximin? Look, really tricky player. I think bags of skill, still young enough to do something. I think he'll end up at a top 8 club, this summer, if he leaves Newcastle. But I don't think we need another one of these, right? We already got Pepe, and he's underperforming. And when I'm looking at the system that we're trying to play, and Arteta seemingly needs more technical players that can play behind the ball instead of in front of it, if that makes sense. And St. Maximum is an isolation, one-on-one player, really tricky, but lacks a little bit of end product. I think what we need is players more similar to Saka that can, keep the ball and play make and beat a player one-on-one, but ultimately keep it. And we already have Pepe, so I wouldn't bring in St. Maximum. And I think Newcastle, if they stay up, which it looks like they have a decent chance of doing so, they'll want a lot of money for St. Maximum, and I just don't think that it would be worth it. I'm looking at, if we're going to spend money on another offensive player that is going to play in the wing roles, I would rather look at somebody like my under the radar signing would be Manor Solomon. I think he plays for Shakhtar Donetsk. We're already linked with him. He would cost us 10 to 12 million. Technically brilliant, has 2 feet, so you could play on either side. Quick, can beat a man, and I would like him. And if we're looking to spend a little bit of cash that we probably don't have, I'd want us to go to maybe RB Leipzig and get Nkunku, because he can play like a winger. He can play like a creative midfielder, scores goals, and can play make. And I think he would fit in Arteta's system. So Aubameyang is not a bad contract signing. What I'm saying is that there's a narrative amongst the Arsenal fans that everybody wanted Aubameyang to sign a new deal. I know plenty of people who didn't, and it was for this exact reason, because we just went through the Ozil scenario. And even though I get the whole who's going to score our goals, you have to re-sign Aubameyang because who's going to score for us and the type of form that he's in. But you pay people for what they can do for you and not what they've done already. And I think that there was underlying metrics that said that he's overperforming on his XG, which basically means that if he just hits a bad run of form, we're looking at being where we are now. And so is it worth it to get somebody on a long-term contract on huge money that could potentially start to underperform or just perform regularly on his XG? And we're in this position now where we're kind of stuck with him. So it's not about it being a bad signing. I just think that they could have been a little bit smarter on that. We're not making it into the top 4. Re-signing Aubameyang is a top 4 move. If you weren't going to give him, if there wasn't going to be a creative midfielder that could get him the ball, then what's the point of having him on this large contract? So it's not about a bombing per se. I get why we felt like we need to bring him in or to keep him, but I just think that the narrative around there was no sign that this could ever happen, and the biggest sign is that it happened. We had just gotten rid of, or we were getting rid of somebody who was actually doing the exact same thing, who signed a contract and fell off a cliff, and we were stuck with them. So Aubameyang will probably, I mean, he's in decent form right now. Before the North London derby, he was in good form. So my hope and expectation is that he'll get back into it. So it's not necessarily a bad one. I just think that there's an opportunity for us to maybe do something different. All right, so let's do the last question. Stuart asks, who's my favorite Arsenal player of all time? It's a very, very difficult question, because depending on the day, I could probably give you three different answers, but I would have to say it's probably an odd one, but it's Robert Pires. I love Vieira. He's up there as well. If you ask me on another day, I'd probably say that. And Gilberto. They're my three favorite Arsenal players of all time. But I think because Robert Pires is very underrated, and some of the skills that he had, his ability to know when to be in the box, some of the goals that he scored, he was just such a smooth player. And he wasn't that athletic or quick, but he knew how to play on that left-hand side when Thierry Henry would drift into that space. And I think some of the things that they did over the years was so beautiful to watch. And I just love the player. I love the person, and he's just underrated to me. So the obvious one is Vieira, but the under the radar one that a lot of people probably would be like, oh, that seems a little off, is Robert Pires. But if you go back and watch those games, man, he knew when to be in the box. He was there for just simple tap-ins. He had amazing skill, and he could really beat a man, even though he wasn't that quick or athletic. I just love the player. Thierry Henry is not my favorite Arsenal player, not because I don't love him, but because I'm, I like Pires, and if it's not him, it's going to be one of the engines in the middle. That's why I'm a huge Thomas Partey fan, and I always felt like we needed a player similar in profile, is because we have missed out so much on not having a Patrick Vieira or Gilberto in the side. So those are my other two. But yeah, that's going to be it, you guys. I think that was a good stream, besides the obvious technical errors and all that kind of stuff. But there's about 54 of you guys watching, so make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back on at 7 p.m. UK time with FK for the post-match show for Arsenal versus Sheffield United. We'll get more into the tactics and, talk a little bit more deeply. And FK is absolutely brilliant. If you don't follow FK, you should be. Yeah, I would say the at right now, but I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's like FK Hanaj or something like that. So, but FK is brilliant. So make sure that you join us then, 7 p.m. UK time. And yeah, if I don't see you for the post-match show, I'll see you tomorrow, same time, for another Q&A. So yeah, guys, don't forget, if you want to comment or ask more questions in the comment section after the stream, go ahead and do so, and I will answer them as soon as I can. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.